music here. I put it on the chat box. Do you want to open that music?
Oh, Yamane, put it. Okay. Yamane, if you want to play that one, put it in the chat.
Oh, okay. In here or in our group?
In this, in the Zoom chat.
Okay.
Do you want me to play it?
Yeah, sure. This one, if you can, please.
But I think you're on mute. Your Zoom is on mute, but we can't hear.
How about now?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, we can start. I think.
እሺ ሰላም ጥዕና ሃብለይ ብርኩም ተመልከትና ወዓብ ሰላም መጻኹም ለማዓንቲ ስም ታሪክ ዓድዋን ወይም ደግሞ ታሪክ ደቡብ ዓለም ዝመሰለ ፍልይ ዝበለ ፕሮግራም ሒዝናልኩም መፅና ኣለና ኣብ ማእኸልና ኣቦና ደሞ ንፈቶምን እናኽብሮምን ብጣዕሚ ነኽብሮም ዶክተር ግላድዮስ ምሳና ኣለዉ ሰሎማዓንቲ ብታሪክ ደቡብ ዓለም እንደገና ከዓ ብኡን ቀፂሉ ብምክንያት ጦርነት ዓድዋ ናይ 127 ዓመት ባትል ኦፍ ዓድዋ ዝነበረ ታሪክ ኣመሲሉ ምሳና ሕፅረ ዝበለ ታሪክ ክውና እዮም ከምሩና እዮም ምሳና ክትፅሉ ክትውዕሉ ምሳና ታሪክ ክትሰምዑ ብክብሪ ንዕድም ብስም ቲፒኤን ብስም ትግራይ ኮሚኒቲ ፎም ብክብሪ ንዕድመኩም ምሳይ ኮሆስተረይ ሰናይ ገብረ ሚካኤል ኣሎ ሰናይ ናባኻ ኸይድ
Thank you, Yamana. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm excited to get back to the History of Tigray series. You guys probably already know me by now, but I am Sanai Gibramichael. I'm based in Denver, Colorado. I am part of the Dogali Professionals Network, and we're also part of the Tigray communities from North America. And our vision and ideology here is to build a little Tigray in not only North America, but across the world. As you are aware, our people have been going through countless sufferings for many years now. And this session right here gives us more than hope. It gives us knowledge. It gives us power to understand basically who we are, where we came from, and not to just know the surface level history titles. I am very excited to be joined with Yamane, my brother here, and also our Professor Galadios, who is like a father to many of us, a friend to many of us. And I'm just so excited for this lesson. We have been doing this history series for many years now, before the pandemic, prior before the war. And if you guys can, please mute yourself. If you can kindly mute yourself. If you have any questions or concerns, please put that in the chat. And if you don't mute yourself, I will mute you. And without further ado, let's introduce Dr. Gladios Araya, the Professor of African and International Studies. He's at the City University of New York, CUNY. And Professor Gladios, we are excited to have you back. And I'm excited to gain some more knowledge from you. And we want to give you the floor and the time. So please, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Sanai, for that introduction. And thank you, Yamane, for your Tigrinya introduction as well. So what I'm going to do actually today is following our conversation last time, I am going to present Dogali and the Adwa events. These were historic events, victory of our people that the present generation, especially in the diaspora, should know. So mostly I'm gonna talk in English, of course, and most of you don't understand English. And if necessary, I'm gonna, from time to time, I can use Tigrinya. But when it comes to the Q&A session, you can use whatever you want to use, Tigrinya or English, okay? So what we're going to do is why I've been arguing all along that Dogali actually is the first victory of Ethiopians. By the way, today we're not going to just confine ourselves to Tigray because Adwa was a battle fought by all Ethiopians, and we have to understand it in that context. The Adwa victory and the Dogali victory as well. And an emperor, Johannes, actually one of the brilliant modern emperors known as modernizing monarch, who was king of kings of Ethiopia. He was not just king of Tigray. You have to understand that. So in any case, what we have to do is this. You should understand that the late 1880s was what is known in history as a scramble for Africa, or partition of Africa by European powers. So they literally overran the continent to colonize the entire continent. But because we had these great people like Ras Adwa and Emperor Johannes, our independence was maintained. Actually, we survived the onslaught of European colonialism due to those two victories, Dogali and Adwa. But for some political reason, it was only Adwa that was exalted or given the official recognition. Dogali was not recognized, actually. So I feel so bad about it because that was a great victory of Ras Alula, especially what Ras Alula led victory. So I'm going to give you some historical background so that you can have a good sense of what I'm going to talk about today. Due to the coming of Europeans to colonize the continent, and then there were regional problems as well, not just the Europeans, but the Mahdist forces of Sudan and the Egyptians also. There was a series of battles that Emperor Johannes and Ras Alula conducted against these invaders. So we have to begin with Gunda Gunde. This is northern Tigray, used to be northern Tigray, now it's part of Eritrea. Gunda Gunde, 1875. The first battle between the Johannes and Ras Alula forces and the Egyptians. Those Egyptians then were under the Ottoman Empire. So it was the Ottoman Turks that were fighting actually, really. Although Egypt was autonomous, it was part of the Ottoman Empire. So 1875, so in 1875, the Ras Alula and Axumawian forces won. They were victorious. They virtually decimated the Egyptian forces, actually. But a year after that, in 1876, another battle was waged between the Egyptians and the Ras Alula and Axumawian forces. The second battle. Now a place called Gora. And then also the Egyptians lost. They were defeated, actually. And then thousands of them were made prisoners of war. After that, after 1876, Emperor Johannes actually appointed Ras Alula to become the governor of Membelash. Membelash is now Eritrea. Eritrea did not exist yet. Okay, so Membelash. So he had to go to Membelash. He founded a city by the name Asmara. Asmara, the capital city of Eritrea, was founded by Ras Alula, as a matter of fact. And then while he was in Asmara organizing the city and his government and all those things, there was a challenge threat coming from northwestern part. This is beyond central Eritrea today, a place called Kufit. In a place called Kufit, he's going to confront the Mahdi's forces of the Sudan. Okay, it was a bloody war. But before Alula organized his forces, his main forces, the front fighters under Blata Gebru actually fought the Mahdi's first. But in that first battle, Blata Gebru actually died in that battle. He was a great guy. And then Alula was really so angry. He had to really reorganize his forces and then ambush the Mahdi's forces, not just confront them directly, but ambush them, encircle them. 5,500 Mahdi's were sacrificed in that battle, but close to 1,500 people of ours also sacrificed themselves. That was a major victory. Kufit, people don't know about this. 1885. Again, the Italians came. Look, these people had no respite at all. This Emperor Johannes and Ras Alula. The Italians came via Massawa, by the Red Sea. They too had an ambition to colonize the whole northeastern part of Africa. They needed colonies as well, like other Europeans. So they came over, and this time the emperor himself came along with Ras Alula. So 1885, they're going to fight the Italians at a place called Sahati, Shati, Sahati. It's near Massawa. It was a bloody war as well. In Sahati, the Axumawian forces and the Italians actually lost so many fighters. There was no winner in Sahati. After that, Ras Alula had to reorganize his forces again. And Emperor Johannes had to go back because he had so many things to do to administer. Via Asmara, he had to go back to Mawale. The following battle is going to take place in Dogali, 1887, January 26, 1887. Here we go. It was a great victory for the Alula forces now. Alula is by himself now. He has thousands of them, but he's a general known for military strategy, and he had weapons as well that he that he got from the Mahdi's forces, from the Italians themselves at Sahati. But interestingly, that all of you should understand that Emperor Johannes was not just fighting and fighting. He was a great diplomat. He had relations with the Russians. During Emperor Johannes, Tsar, or the emperor or the king of Russia, was Alexander, Tsar Alexander. And then luckily, as Johannes befriended himself with a Russian diplomat by the name Ashimov. Ashimov came to Meghalaya 2 times, and he got plenty from the Russians. So they had an advantage. If you don't have, you see that many the Ashanti in Ghana fought the British, the British firearms compared to the Ashanti. Now, the forces of Alullah and that's Johannes do have superior firearms. The firearms are going to decide the outcome of a battle anywhere in history. Okay? So he had good relations with the Russians. As a result, they gave him thousands of guns, as a matter of fact. It's with those guns that Ras Alullah fought the Italians on January 26, 1887 at Dogali. And Dogali now is going to be the first victory, great victory of our people, as a matter of fact. In Dogali, they fought, and the Italians lost. The Italians themselves said, we have lost 500 of our most great commanders. And out of the 500, 22 of them were generals. So they have nothing left. Okay, so they considered, the Italians considered that they were defeated by Ras Alullah at Dogali. Ras Alullah was actually, apparently, leading, according to Italian archives, the Ethiopian forces. And General Cristoforo was leading the Italian forces. Cristoforo himself was killed in that battle at Dogali. So in commemoration to that Dogali defeat, and trying to remember their heroes, they call them heroes anyway, the Italians, they have now a statue in the heart of Rome, known as Piazza dei Cinquecento, Piazza of the 500, because 500 of them were killed. Then when I was reading this Italian archives, it says Cristoforo on that side and Ras Alullah on this side, and they have flags as well, and the Italian tricolor flag, and the one that was side by side with Ras Alullah was, according to the Italians, actually a tricolor, but first red, and then white, and then green. But the one I found, the Emperor Johannes flag was not that. The Emperor Johannes flag was actually red at the top, white in the middle, and then blue at the bottom. And in the middle of that flag, there is a lion. This was Adwa Johannes' flag. It was never recognized because of Menelik's politics. It was never recognized. Dogali was never recognized as well. So Dogali is a great victory for not only the people of Tigray, for all Ethiopians and for all Africans as well. Because as a result of Dogali, that part of the world is going to remain independent, will never be colonized by Europeans. After Dogali, however, there was another threat. See, the Emperor Johannes and Ras Alullah, they never had any respite, never. So another threat from the Mahdis that were defeated in 1885 at Kufit. Now they came the other way around on the western frontier, known as Metemma, which is not part of Gondar, of course, or if you should know. It's a little far from Tigray. And they had to mobilize their forces and go to Metemma as well. This is 1889 now. The battle is going to take place at Metemma in March 1889. In that battle, the Ethiopian forces, there were the Gondarian and some Gojami, some others as well. It was only Menelik who didn't come, the Shoan forces. But the Tigrayan forces, the Gondar forces, the Gojami forces, and Wollo, some of the Wollo forces were also in Metemma. Emperor Yohannes himself was leading the war. Ras Alula is by his side. There were many other Rases. The Rases are the generals, okay? Ras Alula and Ras Suhat and Ras Mengesha. Ras Mengesha apparently is the grandfather of the living Ras Mengesha. Okay? All these generals were there. They had thousands of troops. They have guns as well. But anyway, true to his diplomatic genius, Emperor Hans wrote a letter before the war started to Abu Anja. Abu Anja is the leader of the Sudanese Mahdist. He said to him, what are you going to benefit if you come and kill my people? And what do I benefit if I come to Sudan and kill your people? They came to colonize and subdue us. It was incredible when I read that one, actually. But Abu Anja did not respond in the affirmative. You see, this is the problem now. But in the middle of the fighting, Axumawian was wounded. He was shot. Some say he was shot from behind, and all those things. I tried to get that information from different archives, but I didn't really. But anyway, he was seriously wounded, and on the second he died in Metemma. So this is March, and then 1 month actually is going to be the emperor of Ethiopia, and while those grand forces, especially Ras Mengesha and others, were trying to hide the dead body of Yohannes, these Mahdist forces come over and then fight in the bush where they were hiding. Several of them died in that thing. And then they managed to behead Emperor Yohannes. They took his head to Khartoum, to Omdurman, as a matter of fact. Omdurman was then their capital. So that was the end of Yohannes. And due to this now, remember, the fall of Yohannes, the fall of Emperor Yohannes means the complete geopolitical change of the Horn of Africa, because a country called Eritrea is going to be born now for the first time. The geopolitics is going to change completely. And by May 1889, Emperor Menelik became the king of Ethiopia. He immediately concluded a treaty with the Italians. He's going to give them some land, which is present-day Eritrea, by the way. And by modern parlance, we call that treason or betrayal of a country. But Menelik was trying to survive the Italian colonial forces, and he would sacrifice some part of the land of Tigray. So northern Tigray is going to go. Hamasin and Sarai, all those territories up to Massawa is going to be lost to the Italians. So it's going to go like that, but after some time they're going to, the Wuchali Treaty and all those things. But at one point, they needed more land. See, they were not satisfied with what they got, the Italians. So what they're going to do is they're going to try to invade proper Tigray, not just coming from Eritrea. In 1890, they officially proclaimed their first colony, Eritrea. Okay, and then from then they're going to come forces, and they want to also take over Tigray. This time they're going to confront Ras Mengesha Yohannes. And then Ras Mengesha Yohannes mobilized the Tigrayan forces. Now the Tigrayans are alone fighting the Italians. Okay, it's not like Matama. And he actually proclaimed what they call Katet. Katet means stand up against the Italians and fight. But he could not because you know the Italians had superior firearms now, and Ras Mengesha had guns, but fewer guns. So they actually took over almost the whole of Tigray. They have gone all the way to southern Tigray, a place called Amba Alaji. At Amba Alaji, Menelik had no choice but to come over, because if they defeat Ras Mengesha and the Italians take over the whole of Tigray, then Menelik himself is not going to survive. Sooner or later, they're going to enter Addis Ababa, and they're gonna say Ethiopia is also part of their colony. So due to this, Menelik had no choice but to mobilize a majority of Ethiopian people, as a matter of fact. So he came with thousands of troops to Amba Alaji. At Amba Alaji, Ras Sabhat was imprisoned by Ras Mengesha. There was a problem among the Tigrayan aristocrats before the fighting took place, actually. So the Italians released Ras Sabhat. They want to use Ras Sabhat against other Ethiopian forces. Ras Sabhat had like 1,500 fighting forces, but soon he's going to trick them. He's going to pretend that he's going to fight alongside the Italians, but soon he's going to be against the Italians. So by the time the Ethiopian forces came over, the problem is Amba Alaji. For those of you who know, Amba Alaji is really a high terrain, about sea level, very high. Alamata, the city below Amba Alaji, is a flat land, completely flat land. So those Ethiopians are coming from the flat land and climbing the mountains. But Italians are at the top of the mountains, where they had an advantage. But even then, the Italians, with sheer force of the Ethiopians, they overwhelmed them. They overwhelmed the Italians at Amba Alaji. They killed many of their commanders, and the Italians were forced to retreat from Amba Alaji to Megale, the capital of Tigray. And then Ras Sabhat disappeared. Now the Italians don't know where Ras Sabhat is. He's gone to Agame, where he belongs. Agame was that part of Tigray was his dominion. And at Megale, the Ethiopians came and surrounded them. This is prelude to the Adwa. I'm doing it on purpose because we can't start with Adwa. You have to start with Ras Mengesha fighting, and then the Amba Alaji thing, and then the Megale. The Megale was a siege they were surrounded by the Ethiopian forces now. The Italian forces. Ultimately, they were forced to hoist a white flag in Maqala, the Italians. And then they had to retreat from Maqala to Edagahamus. And then they, from Edagahamus again to Adigrat. And then from Adigrat to the outskirts of the mountains near Adwa. Okay? So they're going to be there. So the Ethiopians are going to come now under, of course, Menelik and others. Even Ras Alula himself is going to be there. And then they're going to see each other face to face in Adwa. Mostly, for those of you who know Adwa, the Bagarima monastery and the Mariam Shawito area that was occupied by Ethiopian forces. On the other hand, opposite to them were the Italian forces. The Italian forces had 4 brigades of 17,700 troops, well armed. One of the brigades was known as African Brigade. African Brigade means Eritrean, completely Eritrean forces. The 3 others were Italians, of course. But the Ethiopian forces were 120,000 of them. Out of the 120,000, 70,000 are going to be the fighting forces at the front. So we've seen this video that when we started out, you see the video of Bashar Alam. Bashar Alam Mahforum is going to play a major role. Not fighting with guns, but espionage, intelligence. He was an intelligent man, Bashar from Intijah. And he was not doing this for the first time, spying for the Ethiopians against the Italians. He was actually working hand in glove with Ras Alula and Atse Yohannes long time ago. It was the Basha title was given to him by Atse Yohannes, as a matter of fact. Some say Ras Alula, possible, but in most instances, it's the emperor that really appoints people with a title. So Bashar Alam was going back and forth. In effect, he was like a double agent. He was being paid by the Italians, being paid by the Ethiopian forces as well. His main contact was Ras Alula. So Bashar Alam Ahfaram was reporting to Ras Alula. And Ras Alula, of course, to the camp of the emperor. He gives them the entire information, the ammunition they have, the guns they have, the number of troops they have, the Italians, and most importantly, the location they occupied in the Adwa area. Some of you know Adwa. The city is surrounded by mountains. It's really mountainous. So it's almost fighting on the mountain. It's gonna be there. So they benefited a lot from the information gathered by Bashar Alam. They know very well what's going on with the Italians now. And then the deception was made. This actually was told to Bashar Alam himself, to tell the Italians that the Menelik camp actually has abandoned its camp. It's going back to all the way to Addis Ababa. And at the same time, he misinformed them. Most of the Ethiopian forces are by the Tekaze River, way out. So they're not going to really fight against you. He deceived them, actually, really. And the Italians believed him. They trusted him, actually. It was really good. So what will happen now is the Italians are going to come over. And then they have a map. I wish I could have it with me now, but a map made by them the location of the Ethiopians, the location of the Italian forces, and then the rendezvous point that the commanders of the Italian force are going to meet. In the heart of Adwa, there is a church called Kidane Mehret. But they were confused. They were lost in the wilderness of Adwa, and they couldn't find Kidane Mehret, the church. And Baratieri, the general, who is the main commander of all the brigades, Baratieri is also the governor of Eritrea, by the way. He himself has come to really coordinate the activities, the movements of his troops. But because those commanders could not meet at Kidane Mehret, his coordination was completely in shambles. He could not do it at all. And then unknowingly, the battle is going to start early in the morning, March 1, Sunday, 1896, like 6 a.m. in the morning. So the shooting started. The Italians were actually in disarray already, and then there were some 15,000 Ethiopian troops at Mariam Shawito alone that the Italians couldn't see them. They were ambushed by them. They were encircled. So it's going to be a bloody war. It was a conventional war, as you can imagine. It's not a guerrilla war. It's conventional. So the face-to-face battle. But one misconception I want to dispel. One misconception is you've seen the video of Bashar Alu. They're fighting with lances and spears and what have you. That's completely wrong. I've taught this to my students. Those Ethiopian forces were fighting with up-to-date guns. They had artillery too. Artillery, the range was 4,000 plus of the Ethiopians. That of the Italians was 3,800. So they had superior weapons. Of course, there were some people were, were using guns and spears and lances and what have you. But the majority of the fighting forces at Adwa actually use guns, modern guns, okay? That's why the Italians lost. So the 6 a.m. in the morning, by 10 in the morning, the shootings died out actually. There was sporadic fighting, but there was no bloody fighting going on by 10 a.m. in the morning. By noon, it was over. So we're talking about 6 hours fighting, okay? It was over. Like 6,000 of the Italian forces dead from the 17,000. 2,000 were captured as POWs. They took them all the way down. After the battle was over, they took the 2,000 Italians to Addis Ababa as prisoners of war. For some of you who know Addis Ababa, the city, there is a place called the Italian Sefer in Addis Ababa. The Italian Sefer was given to that place when the Italians, the POWs actually settled. They gave them that space, okay? And then another 4,000 to 5,000, they were fleeing the battle zone. So what do they have choice now? They can't go to Shire because they will be lost in the wilderness. They have to go toward Adigrat. There is a road that connects Adigrat and Adwa via Bizet, which is the Brodamo area. So they have to go that way toward Adigrat. But the Agame forces came over. They slaughtered them. All of them, actually, really. But 2,000, they made it to Eritrea. And they thought they were being pursued by the Ethiopians. They've gone all the way, not only Asmara, to Massawa. So at that point, Ras Alullah said to Emperor Menelik, look, we won the war. We had the upper hand. The Italians lost. Now it's about time to go retake Eritrea, because it was part of our land. It was part of our territory. It's ours. Menelik did not accept that proposal. It's quite intriguing why he did not want to do it. So Ras Alullah was very sad as a result of that. But anyway, the battle was over after March 1, 1896. The Italians have gone back, but they maintained their Eritrean colony. You see, because Menelik doesn't want to pursue them. That he doesn't want to go after them. Instead, he's gone back to Addis Ababa. So that was the end of the Battle of Adwa. Okay, but now Adwa, unlike Dogali, is going to be covered by international media. By the way, when I did this presentation, what I'm just telling you now, I presented it many times at different places. The first presentation was in 1996, the centennial anniversary at Howard University in Washington. So already I've been talking about this for almost 3 decades now. And then we've gone to Chicago, Dogali Museum, Black Museum. We presented it over there too. There were 2 people with me, like Professor Ephraim Isaac and Ambassador Berhane Christos was with me as well then. So we celebrated the 100th anniversary. So, but however, before I went to Howard University, I've checked the microfilm report of the New York Times. New York Times was then there. That's an old newspaper. So I got a lot of information about how the Ethiopians defeated the Italians from that microfilm. And what the New York Times said actually was Adwa was not only a victory for the Ethiopians, it triggered a lot of crisis, political crisis in Italy. Because the Italians started demonstrating against Crispi, the prime minister. They told him to give up power. They were ashamed because they were defeated by black people. The Germans said, actually, how can you guys be defeated? It's a shame. Got to do something. We're going to help you, the Germans said. They were hypocrites, actually. And the Italians could not do it. They were defeated. They were slaughtered, actually, really. And on top of that, ramification that took place in Italy, the political crisis as a result of the Adwa victory. Adwa became an inspiration to black people all over the world, all Africans. The first people to get information of the Adwa victory were Somali people and the Yemeni people. On the other hand, on the other side of the Red Sea, the Somali were inspired because the Somalis were already conquered by the Italians. So they want to fight back because if Ethiopians win, we can also win, they said. Another important thing that I want to share with you now, before I finish, is that Adwa victory became an inspiration to all black people, including African Americans, particularly African Americans who were in Harlem, New York. They celebrated the Adwa victory the first time. And then, of course, as a result of that, a Pan-African movement began. You see now, the whole continent of Africa is colonized. The Caribbean is part of the European colony. And then all black people are subdued by Europeans. So 4 years after Adwa, 1896, right? 1900, one great lawyer by the name Henry Sylvester Williams is going to organize the first Pan-African conference in London. Henry Sylvester Williams is, I told you, by profession, an attorney. He was from Trinidad. Trinidad was British colony, so he was in London. Then other people like C.L.R. James and George Padmore are going to join him. So the first Pan-African conference, the agenda was to liberate black people, to decolonize the African thing and get self-determination for the African people, independence for African people. That was the agenda of the Pan-African movement. So the Pan-African movement, some people are going to join them later on. Young people from Africa, Kwame Nkrumah was one, who is going to be the first president of Ghana. Dus Mohammed from Sudan is going to join them as well. And then Sédar Senghor from Senegal, who was the first president of Senegal, as a matter of fact. There were Aimé Césaire from Martinique, a little island, tiny Dutch island in the Caribbean. But Aimé Césaire was a great, great poet and a fighter. The French colony, Martinique, Senegal, French colony, they met in Paris. And they joined the Pan-African movement. They came with an idea called negritude. Negritude means African personality and pride. They were trying to uplift Africans. They were trying to really the self-esteem, boost the self-esteem of African people. And it helped a lot, as a matter of fact, because Africans began fighting the Europeans. It was not easy. It will take some couple of decades anyway. After 1900, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, the fighting is going to begin in earnest. 1960s, some African countries became independent. In 1960 alone, 17 African countries became independent. This is part of the inspiration of Adwa, part of the Pan-African movement. 1963, African leaders assembled in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. They founded Organization of African Unity on May 25, 1963. After that, of course, some of them are going to stay, like Angola, Mozambique. They have to fight, going to take a long time. But anyway, the contribution of the Adwa is really, really great. It was great. So that's why we celebrate the 127th anniversary of Adwa. But like I said, from now on, I have put it in, as part of the curriculum in my school. Dogali is in, but I need more recognition, worldwide recognition for Dogali. So we should celebrate next time, Dogali and Adwa. Okay, this is all I want to say. So I'm going to stop right here. If you have questions, I'm gladly going to accept them, okay? Thank you for listening.
Wow. Thank you, Professor Gladios. That was amazing. Just real quick, before we open up for questions, I learned a lot. I didn't even know primarily Asmara was named after Rasulullah. I did not know that. And yeah, that's pretty amazing. I'm definitely inspired by the Pan-African movement, the snowball effect, the geopolitical landscape changing drastically. And well, I got one question. How can we, the diaspora, liberate ourselves from the current circumstances of what's going on in Tigray?
Well, the first step actually is Mr. Senai. The first thing is you can liberate yourself via education, via knowledge. People are not knowledgeable. People don't know about their history. If you don't know your history, you don't even know where you're going to go. If you don't know your history and your culture and your language, the political consciousness is going to be low. So two things are important: knowledge of history and political consciousness. You got to be politically conscious. You got to be aware of what is going on, what's taking place now. Now Ethiopia is in mess, actually. That country has no pride anymore. Thanks to Abiy Ahmed and all these bastards. Come on. That country is, it's not even really, what can I tell you? What I just told you, these Caribbean people, especially Jamaicans, they're so proud of Adwa. Even celebrating Adwa, there was a problem in Addis Ababa because the Oromo don't want to go to the Menelik Square and the Amhara want to the Menelik Square, and the Amhara people, the main problem for all this crisis. So you have to know, number one, the politics, the ABC of politics on the ground in Ethiopia is messed up, okay, due to so many things. They're not talking about history and all those things. They're talking about grabbing lands and killing people, and of course, what have they done to Tigray? You know, with Sinai, genocide. You see, I just tweeted yesterday because Blinken is going to Ethiopia on Tuesday, and I said they got to allow the Human Rights Commission that want to investigate the crimes perpetrated by Abiy and others in Tigray. And I said that you have to do it. If he's going to go there, talk to Abiy and all those things, as if nothing happened. So you have to know the politics going on, what's going on. We in the diaspora, Tigrayan diaspora, we've been talking a lot about genocide. I personally, along with other friends, wrote a letter to Biden and then called it genocide, we say to him. Because it happened in Tigray. But they're not doing it. They don't want to even say that, they don't want to mention that word, genocide, okay? So you have to know politics of Ethiopia, politics of what's going on in the United States. The European politics is complex, but you have to know that. That way you can liberate yourself.
Understood. Thank you, Doctor. Yamane, I'll kick it to you, and then you can kick it to Futsum, and then we'll open it up.
I actually have a question. As Dr. Gladius is, giving us a lecture, I was taking a note. So, I guess the question is because, looking at the 1800 in East Africa, there was a lot of battles. Obviously the Civil War per se, and then the common Italian trying to control the whole East Africa. And you're looking at the 1889 the Batama, and then you look at 87 Dogali, and obviously the May 89 really coming in power. There was a lot of battles. So I guess the question is, would you say the 1800s was a changing history as far as Ethiopian right after the Axumawian kingdom failed? Would you say the 1800 was the a change between the Ethiopian and I guess the Ethiopian between the Eritrean and obviously with the Tigrayan? Would you say that? Would you argue with that? 1800 was a critical years for the Ethiopian history after Axumawian kingdom.
Okay, that's a good question. However, when we say 1800, it's not early 1800s. It's not even middle of 1800s. This is almost the last quarter of the 1800s. We're talking about 1885, 1887, 1889. It's almost end of the 1880s. You see, two things happened actually. One is at a local level. There was politics between, Menelik and Johannes especially. Johannes was really a wise emperor. He came up with the idea of, he actually was the first one to come up with the idea of a federal system. We don't call it federal system, but he gave some autonomy to some parts of Ethiopia. He made Menelik a king of Showa. And then he made Tekla Haymanot king of Gojam. He made Ras Mikael to govern Walla. And he recognized the autonomy of Juma Bajifar of the Oromo in Juma. And he said, of course, all of them are going to pay tribute to the emperor. They're going to send their whatever to Magala. Okay? They agreed, and it was really a mistake. He did not want to pursue the Tedros style of governance. Tedros using a lot of force. And then ultimately, people stood against Tedros. So he said, this is the best thing to do. But if you, next time, if you want to read a book by what's his name, Zodiac Selassie, as Emperor Johannes, he wrote on Emperor Johannes, a very interesting book actually. Zodiac Selassie said, by giving autonomy to those to his subordinates, Johannes may have undermined his own power. May have undermined. You see, sometimes by default things can happen because Menelik wisely used his autonomy to go against Johannes. In fact, allied himself with the Italians. When Emperor Johannes was still alive as Emperor of Ethiopia, Menelik was dealing with Antonelli, an Italian diplomat who was in Addis Ababa. And Antonelli was going back and forth. And the foreign minister of Italy at one point said to Antonelli, please figure out whether Menelik is going to be on our side when we fight Johannes. And then Antonelli could not figure out that thing, of course, that Menelik was doing all these things against Johannes. So that the local politics, the domestic politics was not good. It was giving a chance to foreign enemies to actually really subdue the people. On the other hand, 1884, there was Berlin Conference in Germany. Berlin Conference means they're going to divide up the continent of Africa on a round table. They divide up the whole continent. And then Bismarck, the chancellor, was the chairman. And Bismarck said, okay, Cameroon, Tanganyika, and Namibia, these are mine. And the king of Belgium said, Congo is mine. So they were taking over the whole continent. It was only Ethiopia and Liberia that were never colonized. Liberia was formed by ex-American slaves, actually. And then basically supported by the United States. But Ethiopia is due to Adwa that it became. So there were so many complicated politics going on at a local level, at the international level. Does that
yes, that definitely answered the question. Thank you.
Okay.
So now go ahead.
I was just going to open it up for anybody else who had questions, comments, or concerns. I think this was really genuinely nice, honestly. And I'm grateful that we had this session and this lesson. And the comment that Mulugeta put in the chat, Professor, you've been doing this for 3 decades. And some of us are just finding out the truth. So
yeah.
Thank you so much. It looks like we have a hand raised from Mr. Temescan. Temescan, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, thank you for the lecture. It was good to learn that stuff. I had a question. When I learn about like Ethiopian history, it seems that Johannes kind of gets overlooked a lot. A lot of documentaries I watch, like articles that I read, they talk about Tedros and they kind of just skip to Menelik. So like in your opinion, why do you think Johannes gets overlooked? Is it because of lack of documentation, or is it simply just ignorance?
That's a good question. However, this one is very much related to what I just said earlier. The Menelik politics, the Shoan hegemony, want to hide anything associated with Tigray. Anything. Johannes, Alula, they're not mentioned. You got Alula actually was mentioned several times. They don't want to do that. They actually had a square in the middle of Addis Ababa for Tedros, Emperor Tedros. And Menelik has a statue, you know that. Johannes doesn't have anything in Addis. They did it on purpose, if possible, to erase the achievements of the Tigrayan people. And then they've defined Tigray as a rival to the Shoan hegemony. So to the extent possible, they want to eliminate anything associated with Johannes. However, there are a lot of books written for as Johannes. I myself have written one. And then Zode Gabraselassie have written another one. There is what's his name? I forgot. He's a blind scholar in Germany. He's written about Johannes as well. And then Mama Udine is actually an Amhara from Wollo. He was working for the Ministry of Information in Eritrea for Ethiopia. He's written about Ras Alula. He's written about Johannes as well. The one he wrote on Johannes is fascinating because he prepared it for as a novel or drama, but it reflects the authentic history of Johannes. There are so many books written for Johannes. As a matter of fact, even if the Shoan hegemony or the Amhara thing want to hide, they could not hide it completely. That's the problem. Even today, by the way, with the Abiy Ahmed government, I don't expect much. There are some people who claim to be historians, and they talk about that. In fact, they try to teach to the youth in Addis Ababa about the negative attributes of Johannes. They even say he was cutting throat and all those things. They're bastards. If they were scholars, I myself criticized Menelik many times, but I've given him some positive thing because I'm a scholar. I'm not going to deny what he contributed, like infrastructure, telephone, telegraph, and all those things were introduced by him. For Johannes too, I did the same thing. Johannes was not just fighting all over. He was a genius. Actually, he wanted to industrialize Ethiopia. And as a result, I'm the only one who wrote about that, by the way. You're going to see it sometime. And then sooner or later, it's going to come out. My book is going to come out, a new book. So I said, so that the other ones, hide Johannes' achievements, I have to write it. So, for instance, the first clinic introduced in Mekelle for Ethiopians was Johannes' achievement. He had a Greek doctor, and Johannes, incredible. Let me tell you this. This is quite interesting. His son died of smallpox. Selassie. And he said to the doctor to get a smallpox vaccine, and he got it from Europe. Johannes was the first one to be vaccinated in front of people in Mekelle. Then that clinic was trying to treat people from the plague of smallpox. Okay, there was a mechanic was also appointed by Johannes. There was a gunsmith guy, a Hungarian, who was also a professional, was hired by Johannes. And there was also an American, by the way, who fought on the Civil War in the United States, who was with the Egyptians, but ultimately went and befriended Johannes. And Emperor Johannes hired the American to train the more modern military, all these things. On the other hand, he wants to advance agriculture. And he said, we're not going to be like this forever, like, you know, tilling the land, small plots of land, and then that there's no mass production. And he contacted one monk, priest, Ethiopian, who was in Jerusalem. He told him, can you please get me somebody who's knowledgeable of agriculture? He didn't say agronomy then, but he was in effect talking about agronomy. And then that person got him somebody. So this is not written at all, not told at all, what I just told you. He's done so many things. On diplomacy front, I told you earlier, he had good relations with the Russians, good relations with Queen Victoria. The letters he was writing was really brilliant. So many things. So they can hide it, but they're not completely hide it, okay? We're gonna expose them too. Okay? Whatever they do, we're gonna do that. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes,
Thank you.
Michael has got his hand up. Michael Borge, please go ahead and ask.
Michael Borja, the Madonna. Madonna is going to guide him. Yeah. Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Professor, thank you so much for the wonderful history lesson. I've got a few questions. I don't mind if I can, kind of ask you one by one because it may be lost. Okay. The first one.
Go ahead and tell me what the first one is. What?
The first one is that when you mentioned the very first battle that
Gundagunde
Adwa had was Gundagunde.
Yeah.
And I was confused because there was a monastery by the Palos that is called Gundagundo or Gundagunde. Is it the same thing or a different one?
Well, no. The name is the same. The location is different.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And the other question I have is that when we think of, look, 127 years later, there seems to be some kind of dispute as far as Adwa is going. A lot of people who kind of are the Amhara would say that Menelik and then the Amhara forces were the one that really did a wonderful job, or were plenty and did have a major role. The Tigrayans would say the Tigrayans had a major role, and even there are some Oromo that are saying that Oromos are the ones that did a major role. So I just wanted to know what was the force contribution? How many races of Tigray participated, and how many troops did they have under them? Because you did say they were about 120,000 Ethiopian forces altogether. How many of them were Tigrayans, you would say?
Okay, that's good. Okay, that Gundagunde is clear. Gundagunde, it's a village actually now. It would have been northern between Adwa and Adigrat, actually on the northern front, Gundagunde. But the other Gundagunde, the monastery, is way in the interior of Agame and the Europe area. Actually, Europe, where the Europe people are, you begin Europe boundary is near Zalambasa, but you have to go all the way to Afar, near Afar actually, the Gundagunde monastery. But the name is the same. The second question is second question, I would say that it's a complicated thing anyway, what he just said. What I want to say actually is, I mean, what was the thing that he said, most important thing?
Oh, well, like,
okay,
I say that we have major contribution.
I got it.
And I just want to know what was the Tigrayan contribution at that?
Contribution, okay.
How much important?
Yes, I got it. With respect to the troops contribution, it's difficult to know how many Menelik had, how many Taito had, how many Taklahimanot had. But on the Tigrayan forces, there were four of them, four brigades, okay? One is led by Ras Mangasha, the other by Ras Alula, the third one by Ras Subhat, and the fourth one by the Gyat or the Judge Hagos Tafari. Imagine Subhat was fighting the Italians in Agama. Then at one point he said he wanted to join the Ethiopians at Adwa. And the Hagos Tafari and Ras Subhat came over and joined with their forces. So I would say, for instance, Subhat and Subhat the Gyat Hagos had like 4,000 to 5,000 troops. Okay, that of Ras Mangasha was more, like 7,000 to 8,000 to 9,000. Ras Alula had a lot of forces, but his main job was to collect information via double agent I told you before. So he had like 3,000 troops around with him. However, at one point when the fighting began, Ras Alula himself was asking the emperor to send him Oromo troops, more specifically mounted on horses, okay? The horse, because they were good at they stand. Cavalry, they call them cavalry. So Oromo cavalry was there too, there are thousands of them. That of Taitu, the empress herself, they had thousands. So you can with certainty say Taitu had this many and the Menelik had this many, but the majority were those of Menelik, Shawan forces and Oromo forces. Ras Mokonnen had the same thing, Shawan forces and Harari forces. And Nungus Taklahimanot had the Gojami forces, only Amhara. Okay, Ras Mikael from Wollo had the Oromo and Amhara forces. It's a combination of many. There were many others actually, really. So that brings to 120,000. But imagine something that I did not address is, how do you feed these people? They need to eat, right? They need food. They had some supplies for sure, but they were depending on Tigray for the most part, because the Tigrayan women had to supply them with injera and kecha and all those things. And then they were burning a lot of wood as well. A lot of trees were cut during before and during the Battle of Adwa. So the consumption was high too, but that did not. I didn't address that one. So that's what I can say.
Wonderful, thank you. I mean, if you don't mind, I might have a couple of other questions, but I don't want to be too greedy, and let me allow somebody else to go then come back again.
That's fine, you can do that, but it's not me now. Sanai or your mother.
Thank you, Michael, so much. Thank you. I'll wait.
I'm asking
several questions. Thank you so much. I'm going to kick it to Yamana. We're a little over time, and Yamana's going to close us out.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to say a little thing. I'm مسكين أبونا Dr. Gladius نزيجي سنبت جزيون سوي مسانا وزيتا إيكا لورنا في ساعات موزي مسانا سلسانا بتعاملنا مسكين. Also audience مسانا سلسانا حكم بتعاملنا مسكين. عبز قصل تاريخ ناي identity team especially history of Dogali ዝተልዓለ ብዙሕ ነገር ከአቦና ኖርና እዮም so please stay in touch STPN ዘለኩም ትሕዝቶ እውን follow ግበሩና ካሊእ ከም ትኩልና ንፈልጦ ዝመፅእ ዘሎ ሰመር ዋዕላ ትግራይ ኣብ ዳላስ ከም ዝኽበር ትፈልጡ ኢኹም so ዋዕላ ትግራይ ካብ ጁላይ 16 ጁን 16 እስካብ 19 ክኽበር እዩ so ኣብኡ ክንትርከቡ ብኽብሪ ንዕድም ተስፋ ንገብር ኩላኹም ክርአዩ ክንረኽብኩም ኢና ንብል ኣብ ዝተፈላለዩ ከተማታት ትነብሩ ስፔሻሊ ቲፒኤን ዘለዎን ቻፕተራት እንተሃልኩም ከዓ ደቅኹም ናብ ቲፒኤን ለኣኹ ንስኻትኩም ፓርት ኦፍ ቲፒኤን ኩኑ አይደንቲቲ ምትውን ዝተፈላለዩ ኣነ ኣለኹ ፍጹም ምሳና ሰናይ ሓወይ እውን ነው obviously ፕሮፌሰር ዶክተር ግላዲዮስ ምሳና ነው so ዝኸኣልኩምዎ ብስ ሂስትሪ ኦፍ ትግራይ ወይ ደሞ ኣብ ትግራይ ዘሎ ኩነታት ብዙሕ ፕሮጀክታት እውን ፕላን ዝግበር ስለ ዘሎ እንድሕር ኮንትሪቢዩት ክትገብሩ ትኽእሉ ምስ አይደንቲቲ ቲም ወይ ምስ ቲፒኤን ዝተፈላለዩ ፕሮግራማት ምሳና ከተግዙና ትኽእሉ ኢኹም so please join us with TPN አይደንቲቲ ቲም ዝተፈላለዩ ብዙለ ፕሮግራም ንኽንዓፅና ኣይደ ሰናይ ካሊእ ነገር ትብሎ እንድሕር ልኻ ናባኻ ኸይድ
Thank you guys for joining us. We're at our time now, but we will be doing this again. History Tigray series is back in the chat right now, and we're also promoting Wa'ala Tigray in Dallas 2023. That link is in the chat right now as well. We will see you guys again. Thank you to cut everybody off, but we will be back. We hope everybody has a good evening.
Have you recorded this thing? It was recorded, right?
What? Yes, it's recorded.
Okay, then people can watch it.
Yeah, yes, sir. It's streamed live.
Thank you. Have one.
Thank you. Bye, guys.